Hello and welcome to the Hedonistic Way at Midday Show. I'm Renee Main and I am really honoured to share with you this beautiful soul that is Lisa Page. She is a poet, she is a mentor, she is doing absolutely amazing things within her space. She is one of the most soulful, connected, beautiful, wise woman that I know. She has this quiet grace about her. She is absolutely fierce, and you can't, although her voice is quiet and it's so powerful and it's so magnetic, you can't not hear it, and it lands every single time. So I'm really excited to share Lisa with you today. Lisa, if you are watching, just give me a little comment or a heart so I can invite you in. And then we can share your magnificence with everybody. She's just jumping in now, guys. So I'm going to bring in this beautiful woman. Thank you, Lisa. I am trying to swipe. Why won't it swipe? Let's see. Okay. So what else can I share about this incredible woman? She walks her talk. You know, I think we're in this space where, you know, it's really easy to preach a lot of things, but to actually embrace them every single day takes it to a whole new level, you know, and that is something that I really admire about this woman. It says it's adding you in, Lisa. I'm not sure if there's something happening your end, so you can jump on the call. Hey Margaret, happy birthday! I hope you're having a beautiful day. Hey Mo. Alrighty, thank you so much for your patience, everybody. We are trying to, I sent out a little message to the universe asking that technology is our friend today. It says that there was no answer. Lisa, let's try you in again. Okay, I'm going to try and add you in again, Lisa. So hopefully it's coming up your end. So let's just...
Okay. Woo, is that it? We live?
Whenever it actually happens and it works, I do it every single week, but there's still that element that I've won the lotto, that it's worked.
I get it. I've rearranged. I've asked my neighbours just to stop renovating for an hour.
Oh, thank you.
Hi.
Thank you.
Now is my vision all okay? Can you see me?
Yeah, it's all perfect. Yeah,
Beautiful.
I can hear you, I can see you, and it's good to see your beautiful face, girl.
And you too. I'd give you a huge hug.
Good to see you.
Yeah, you too.
Tell me, I have already spoken about you, so let's just dive right in if that's cool.
Absolutely, yeah.
Tell me what my insides just feel. I can feel them just pulsating. I'm so happy to see that face of yours. It's been so long.
Oh, you too.
Tell me, what is turning you on at the moment, my darling?
Oh, what's turning me on? Well, this is going to sound a little bit erotic straight up, but they're not those kinds of dreams. My dreams are turning me on at the moment, actually.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So I don't know about you, but I've always really worked with my dreams to as intuitive insights, as sort of psychological processing. You know, sometimes they're, you know, profoundly advising, and sometimes I can just feel them clearing the way. So I would say if there's anything turning me on right now, it's probably really my dreams, just really noticing as I consciously see my own resistances and say, okay, let's see how we can melt those, and seeing what shows up in my dreams. It's very cool. It's sometimes takes days to kind of sit with them to, well, what's really going on there, but it feels deeply informing. So yeah, I would say that's one of the things that's turning me on right now.
That's when you say that, and just for those watching, and perhaps I'm stating the obvious, but I just want to clarify that when Lisa's talking about dreams, it's not her goals and aspirations or her wisdom. It's actually
no, exactly. It's what's happening at night. Yeah, it's what's happening at night. Yeah.
Yeah, beautiful. Now tell me, if anybody watching, so let's go with, like, why is it important that hello Sam, why is it important that we tap into and use this form of communication in our lives? Why is it important?
You know, I think that even more so nowadays with social media and just the amount of incoming data that we are bombarded with, you know, every day. It's really different to when you and I were kids, when really all we might turn on the radio, we might turn on the television or open a magazine. But now I feel like every time I go to make a phone call or I go to receive a text or, you know, open up Facebook or whatever, I actually put Facebook back on my phone specifically for this interview because I'd taken it off. I don't have anything on my phone except for my phone and my text. They're the only notifications I have. And so I think for me, as a writer and as a teacher, I've been finding, you know, really more so over the last 6 to 12 months that I've had to pull back from all of this incoming data and just drop deeper into this, my own knowing, dropping deeper into my own fears, my own resistances, just, you know, to be able to know in the moment what's really going on here. Because I don't think you can access that knowing unless you're clear. And I think it's very easy to think that if we do a 5-minute meditation a day, we're clear. But actually, you know, I even noticed, I don't know if you followed the royal wedding at all. I'm not into royals at all, but, you know, I watched it a little bit and I noticed myself going down these rabbit holes of YouTube videos and just how that information would stay in my psyche while I was walking around in my life. And I'm not really into thinking about the royal family, but here I am carrying them around. Well, that's what we do all the time. Every time we open a feed and there's 100 people's status updates, we're carrying that around. And I was just finding for me it was clogging up my psychic bandwidth, and I wasn't accessing the depth of clarity that I really wanted to access to write for my poetry and for just for in the moment engagement with life. So yeah,
absolutely. I wrote a poem about that exact thing, about the mindless scrolling last week. So I absolutely understand, and I'm with you 100%. How can we start to then use our dreams
Mm.
to, like, you almost need like them transcribed, right?
Well,
Because
you know
they
what?
come in.
Here's the thing, the transcription equipment is within. So I've worked
Yeah.
with my dreams my whole life. I could tell you dreams that I had when I was 7 years old. It's just a part of my life that's always been really vivid and clear and real. And I never really got this piece around, the dictionary that says a hammer means this, a bear means this. Like, it just didn't make sense to me. And one of my teachers, Dr. Clarissa Pinklestes, who wrote Women Who Run with the Wolves, who, as I'm sure you know, has been a Jungian analyst for over 50 years. When I did a further psychology training with her a few years ago, she taught us dream analysis, how she does it with clients, with herself, and has done it her entire life. And she affirmed what I had been doing and refined it. And it wasn't anything to do with what the book said a hammer was or a bear was. It was, and I can teach it because, I honor her in this teaching, because she said we're free to teach it. Hers is a little more detailed, but the simple version is, you wake up, you write the dream down. I have a voice recorder next to my bed, so I often wake up and voice record it, because 2 hours later I will have forgotten a lot of it. And you kind of underline the main elements of the dream. So was it a red flower? Was it in particular a red flower? If you see a scene, there's a red flower, an old man, or, whatever's in the dream. And then you really just drop into what thoughts, feelings, and ideas come to me when I think about a red flower. And you trust that. You trust what comes. And one of the things we did, which was really cool, was because it's all projection, right? It's the projection of our own psyche onto that thing. So so that's how I do. I sit with my dreams, and sometimes I'm like, I've got no fucking clue what that means. Like, it's just no idea. And then other times, straight away, it's like, whoa, okay, well, I went to bed last night asking for clarity on this, and this is the clarity. I may not like the clarity. I may love the clarity. I may be intensely uncomfortable with the clarity. I may be over the moon about the clarity, but it's a clarity nonetheless. And so, and then for me, because my deepest passion and probably the work that I do with women and couples is around embodiment, it's not enough to just have the recognition here, and it's not enough to feel that it's really important. It's, what's one action I could take today that would honor that insight? What's one thing I could do with my body that would bring that alive? And so, that's how I work with it.
Beautiful. You said to me once, actually, Chris met years ago, like way before kids. So, 15, 16 years ago, he he bought me a dream book. And no matter what it was, we would look it up, and it was like, you are going to die. Something like it could have been a puppy, or it could have been, something that you would, And so in the end, I just went, I'm not looking it up anymore.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. Something that you said to me, it was ages ago. From memory, I had a dream that I was pregnant.
Right.
And you told me, and it was really useful. It was more about, how did you feel?
Yes.
When you found out that you were pregnant
in the dream.
Yes. Yeah. And so it was you know, yes, okay, look at the fact that, you know, obviously you could be birthing something or whatever, but
Sure.
it was that what happened before and after and the feeling
Mm,
and my response to it in the
yeah.
dream. So that
Yes.
was really handy for me. So,
Great. And I think that's
yeah.
pivotal because we're, you know, your feeling response is so revealing. But most people
Mm,
miss what I call the original feeling. So most, you know,
yeah.
it happens so quickly that most
Mm,
people, I don't know, it's kind of like when your partner says something and you think you're really angry, but actually if you just go back in time a little bit, the original feeling was fear. Well, okay, even before that, immense vulnerability. Bingo. Then you
yeah.
know what you're working with. And I think it's the same in dreams.
Mm,
It's the very first feeling that arises. And if you can
yeah.
catch that and know that and
Yeah.
trust it
Yeah.
as a movement of energy, as a movement of wisdom, then
Yeah.
it's incredibly revealing.
Yeah. Absolutely. Now, something that I want to ask you about
Shoot.
is I have been just last week, and you know, and I ask it because it's been in my awareness and space, but I've also noticed a lot of my friends are feeling and talking about the same thing. So obviously, there's a real shift and this, you know, in the unison that we're all experiencing at the moment. And that is when we serve, not just when we serve, in like every single element of our life. I want to ask you the difference between, and I'm going to ask you about archetypes now.
Yep.
So, what is the difference between, or what is the prostitute archetype and versus the lover archetype? And what, let's just start with that.
Okay. So my pre-frame for this is, you know, there are obviously people on the planet who have a much more in-depth knowledge of
Yeah,
archetypes. You know,
yeah,
Caroline
yeah,
Mace, and actually a
yes,
dear friend of
absolutely.
mine, Bronwyn Boyle, Dr.
Yeah,
Clarissa Pinkel
Bronwyn's amazing.
Estes.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So,
yeah,
and I also feel as another preframe that you have the universal archetype, the collective
mm,
consciousness that we're all dialed into. And then you have
yeah,
your own embodiment of it, your own
yeah,
kind of texture, flavor,
yeah.
projection on it.
Beautiful.
So,
Yeah, beautiful.
and and I think this is probably one of the critical pieces around archetypes is not to judge an archetype by its cover. So, for example,
Yeah,
unless you're a sex worker and you absolutely love that you're a sex worker and you have no stuff around the word prostitute, then
yeah.
you might have a negative connotation toward the word prostitute and an
Yes, absolutely.
infatuation with the
Yeah,
word lover, right?
yeah, yeah.
Which is very revealing in itself of one's own
Mm,
psyche and resistances. So I think what's
mm,
really important to remember is that every archetype has a shadow and a light side. Every trait we
yes.
have, you know,
Yeah,
selfishness. As a mother, you know, when
yeah.
you have an unborn, when you a baby just born, it would be selfish not to feed that baby.
Yes.
To nap when the baby is napping so that you can rejuvenate yourself to feed the baby again, and to leave the housework so your husband does the housework,
Mm,
that's a healthy kind of selfish. So
yeah,
every
yeah,
trait and every archetype has a shadow and a light side.
yeah.
The way that I interpret the shadow and the light sides of prostitute and lover are, prostitute is all about trading. When you trade something to get something in return. And she alerts us to when we're trading something unconsciously in order to get something that we fear we cannot create for ourselves. We cannot sustain ourselves. And it's normally around feeling safe and secure in the world.
Yeah.
So the light side of it is she could very consciously be trading this for this and be in absolute body, heart, soul alignment with it. She could also alert you to when it's a little off, when you're trading something to get something so that your limbic brain, the reptilian brain, feels good about it, but your soul is dying, right?
Yeah.
The lover, in a sense, is the same, in as much as, of course, it will have a shadow and a light side. The lover can love to get just as much. You can love too much, can love to fill a hole, can love because she doesn't realize she is love. The moment you forget your love, you'll do anything to feel loved, to be loved. And it's this cavernous hole. And I think many women have experienced that in relationship. I mean, in my own relationship, I practice this, I teach this. And of course, I'll have moments where I'm facing my partner, Mo, and I'll realize he's said something, it's triggered me, and I'm in little girl mode, wanting his love. And if I can just take a breath and drop a little deeper and re-know and re-feel and trust this love that I am, then everything changes again.
Yeah, beautiful. So and I wanted to ask you about this because I know that with everything that you do, as I said before, you are a walking embodiment of that. And you are incredibly successful in what you do and how you serve the world. But you do it from a space of such, not just authenticity, but it's, it's clever, it's badass, and, when you share and serve, but it's also deeply empowering as well. So I think that then that's why I really wanted to get your take on this, is how then can we serve, and what would you then say to those who are listening, is how can we serve from that space where it's and something that I feel like, is it then, because I was originally, and I'm actually just thinking out loud, so apologies.
Shoot.
Is I was thinking that, okay, well, how can I serve from the space of my lover and not the prostitute? But is it then a case of serving, combining and using both of the light side of the prostitute and the lover?
Look, honestly, anything you relegate to the shadow, anything, any trait has to come up dysfunctionally.
Yeah.
So I kind of get really practical. If we were, I think the last time we were together was hanging out by a fire and right. And so if we were sitting by the fire and you asked me that question, I would actually ask you, what do you really mean? What do you really want to ask? Because I really feel that the direct question of, you know what I realize? I realize that I'm working in this way in my relationship or my work, and it's just not in alignment. If you can identify exactly, like if we were sitting around with these women that you're talking about, and we're having this chat, probably every woman would say, well, I'm doing this job, deep down I hate it, I really want to be doing this, but I fear it's not going to be paying the bills if I do it in that way. I don't know, I'm stuck. Like that to me is, okay, now we've got something to work with. Or someone else might say, you know what, every time my man says this, I shut down. I want that depth of intimacy. I want to be this beautiful, wild, free, erotically alive woman that I used to be with him, but I've got this closure going on in this armory and I don't know how to unshackle it. And so then I'm finding I'm giving sex just to keep the relationship alive, but I'm not really feeling. I mean, there's the prostitute there, right?
Yeah.
So absolutely. I don't know, like, do you have a really direct question? Like, it's such a great question. I just feel if we could dial into it a little bit more, it's like, how could we really serve?
Yeah. So in the conversations that I've had around this, it's that, you know, I think most people, are genuinely wanting to do something amazing, to serve in a way that makes them feel good. But as soon as it comes to having to sell or market or whatever it is, it's that trade-off that makes us feel muh. And that could be, as you said before, that could be even just within a relationship, that could be in any single elements.
Okay, so that's really cool. So let's look at women in business, or men in business. I mean, I'm sure you've got really good men who watch as well.
Yeah.
First of all, I think that, again, we are so inundated with information. Do this course and learn about this. Do this course and market like this. I mean, it's beyond the days of, if you have a business, you do this, this, and this. There's a vast array of things you could do in your business. My business mentor, James Tramco, who I have the deepest of respect for, described in his business forum. I remember when he first started it, I said to him, I feel utterly overwhelmed. And I said, and he said to me, when you go into the supermarket, you don't go into the supermarket and put everything on your shelf and try and go through the checkout. What you do is, and now this is how, I mean, he said it in a bloke's way, which is you go in, you choose, you put in your trolley, you know, whatever you're making dinner that night, and you walk out, and then you come back to the supermarket when you need something else. So my feminine way of feeling that, which is both in business, but also, you know, as a practitioner, you know, there's, as a practitioner of sacred intimacy, and in both realms as a parent, oh my God, there's so many things. I could give you a list of 1,000 things right now that I'd love to refine, but it's too much, right?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
So my golden rule these days is choose 3 things, no more than 3 things. And you choose the 3 things that you're most deeply aligned to. So for example, you do Facebook Live. This is my first Facebook Live ever.
Yeah.
I do a radio show because that's, for right now, what I feel most deeply aligned to. Truth is not static, it's dynamic. So ask me next month, next year, it might change. But I feel, you know, for me, I choose the 3 things that I feel are going to be in business of the deepest of service to my community, that will also invite them into how I might be able to serve them if they're ready to work with me. Because I also know that my work's not for everyone. There are probably some people who watch my videos and go, oh my God, what is she on? Like, that's not my bag. And some other women will email me and go, oh my God, I just watched your video and it changed my life. Perfect, right?
Yeah.
Different paths for different people. So I think that what's important is, again, clear the decks, really ask, what do I feel most deeply aligned to? Like, I love speaking. I would much rather get together a group of 20 women and jam by a fire and talk about love and life and sex and intimacy and giving our gifts and being richly rewarded for it. And I would much rather do that than be sitting in a room that is corporate. Like, it's just, I can do it, but it's not my deepest, it's not what's one most deeply aligned to. So I think it's that. I think it's clearing the decks of the shoulds of all the incoming data. Digest what comes in, pick what you're going to put in your trolley, cook with those 3 ingredients. And then from a business point of view, you suck it and see. You do it for a period of time. Does it work? Doesn't it? Am I serving? Yes or no? Is it bringing in the results that I want? Yes or no? Do I feel alignment with it? Yes or no? And that will change over time. But yeah, I think that's how I would play that. Is that helpful?
Yeah, absolutely. It's I agree. It's just, when the internet first started, it was just this avalanche of information, which was absolutely amazing because everything all of a sudden was accessible to us.
Yeah.
But now we've moved into this era of connection, but we've still got so much information, and to navigate through all of that, and I guess it really goes back to what you were saying before, is to just that self-inquiry about, what is feeling good. I want to ask you then. So,
and hang on. Can I just...
absolutely.
I would... It's not necessarily about what is feeling good. It's about what, if you were to be deeply, brutally, soulfully honest, what feels right. Because, for example, for me, I mean, as you know, I'm a poet, and I'm still, even... So Diamond Cutters came out a year and a half ago, and that was the first time my poetry was published. And when that was published, I felt like such a baby poet compared to all of these people who I've had on a pedestal for most of my life. People like, Robert Bly, Mirabai Starr. I mean, Andrew's got Rumi poetry in there. So it happened, my poetry was in there, and it was such an incredible, a wonderful thing. And at the same time, I realized that I became a little bit terrified after that to put any poetry out, because I created this perceived perfection standard, right?
Yeah.
And for me, writing poetry is one thing, but to say it out loud in front of a group of people is a little like saying, hang on a minute, let me just get a crowbar, I'll rip my rib cage open for you, so it's just flesh, and you can poke me in that very tender flesh with your opinions and your judgments. Like, it's still, I feel it in my body. It's like this excruciating tenderness that comes up when I even think about the idea of sharing my poetry outside of arenas that I feel safe. However, So I feel intensely uncomfortable, but I know that it is what I must do now.
Yeah. And
So it's
that is
sometimes it's what
such
it
an
feels
important
ecstatically good, and sometimes it's intensely uncomfortable, but you just know. Oops.
Absolutely, that's right. And you raise a really valid point there, Lisa, is that,
Sorry, I've
often
moved the camera.
as, that's all right. Often as, these soulful business women or men or, and we choose, okay, I'm going to launch this or I'm going to do this because it's what feels good,
Yeah.
but it may not be what feels right.
And it
That
could
is a
be what feels
really important thing.
safe.
Exactly,
It could feel
absolutely.
good because it feels
Absolutely.
safe. And
Yeah.
maybe what feels safe is not what would serve your community most deeply, is not what would allow you to enjoy the rewards of that,
Yeah.
financial or otherwise, most deeply.
Yes, so true. It's like when you were talking about the dream, then, in the beginning of our chat here, is often we miss that first emotion.
Yeah.
So it
Yeah.
might be now it's like, okay, does it feel good? Yeah, it feels good, but we've missed that first emotion. So
Yeah.
I love that. You were saying before, like, to do this live now is you installed the Facebook app on your phone.
I did used to have it, but I took it off. I
Yeah.
took everything off except for so that the only messages I get are text. If you want to text me, I'll
Yeah.
get your message. If you
Yeah.
call me, I'll get your message. And my family, just my two brothers and my mom and our kids, we have a WhatsApp.
Yeah.
And they're the only
Yeah.
ones I get, because they were complaining that I never looked at the photos. And I was like, okay, I'll put the, that's it. That's all I got.
All right. So then, how do being that, you're not online all the time, how then do people find you? How do your clients find you?
That's a good question. I would say over the years, clients have found me mostly by referral or by personally having an experience.
Yeah.
I'm amazed. I have women who might have been on my mailing list for 11 years, and I send them out an email. I send out an email to my community, and then I get this response saying, Lisa, I have been on your list for 11 years, and I feel the call that I need to work with you one-on-one.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now,
Absolutely.
have I always been great at being in touch with my community as I should? No. That's the truth. Sometimes I've gone months without emailing my community, and then I'm like, because, there's events, or I'm traveling, or I'm teaching, or I'm just, working with clients. And so I do really do my best to make sure that my community, I keep that thread of contact, because I just feel by the very virtue of them having given me their email address, that's pretty much the same as sharing. I don't know, I just have this vision of, when you're in primary school and you send a note saying, do you want to be my friend? It's like, yeah, I'll be your friend.
Yeah.
Like, let's connect. And it's that.
Box.
Yeah, it's like, let's connect. And so I really honor that. I don't want to send them anything that's crappy. I only want to send them something that would be meaningful and useful. So I would say that most of my clients come from referral. That's definitely how it started in the beginning. Workshops. I've never been afraid to run my own workshops. And then I would say the more I taught and traveled to teach, that definitely I could feel the building of that. And then, I've also been really blessed. I mean, as you know, I've I, I've just been really blessed to work with some really amazing people as well. You know, Andrew Harvey came to Australia, and so I hosted him and then ran some workshops with him. David Data, who's been a long time teacher of mine since 2008. I've been blessed to assist at his workshops, and then more recently have led the women in his workshops, and so women have gotten to experience me through that. I think it's really about relationship. I really believe that it's how you show up when you're with someone one-on-one. I mean, look, the last time we caught up in Melbourne, who knew that we would end up doing a Facebook Live here today, but that was literally a moment of, you know what, I'm going to Melbourne and I know some really good women in Melbourne. I don't have time to set up a big workshop, but why don't I just send out a couple of emails and see who wants to catch up and have a fireside chat? Fantastic. It wasn't a paid gig. It wasn't me trying to prostitute myself to get something from anyone. It's just like, you know what, let's as a group of good women just catch up. And those relationships have always, I think when you tend to relationship because it feels like a fit, that is also a way. It's not the mass marketing way, but I never have been. Honestly, Renee, my business has probably taken 10 times slower to grow than someone else who did it in a very official way. But when I first started, I was homeschooling my son. You know, I'm kind of happy with the graduation process, really, just that kind of building. So
I agree. I feel that absolutely 100%. And you know, and that night that we did catch up here, it was the most incredible conversation. Like, oh my goodness, it was absolutely amazing. Just delicious conversations, and none of us knew each other, so
that was really cool. That was really cool.
But I left just, you know, like Nadia has come to the jams, but we just
fantastic.
have like amazing conversations, you know. It was just incredible, absolutely incredible. And I love that. And you know, my business has been a slow groove, you know. It's you know, it's who cares if it takes 30 days or, you know, whatever. I don't think it, for me anyway, it's more important that I'm in alignment with who I am, you know.
And I do think what's tricky, you know, I get a little bit cross when I see people selling people the dream of do what you love and get paid really well for it. Do what you love, get paid really. I'm into doing what you love. Trust me, I am doing what I love, and I am incredibly grateful that I get paid well for doing what I love. However, it's okay to have a full-time job and slide into doing what you love. It's okay to have a part-time job, because we're talking about the prostitute and the lover. If you are putting so much pressure on what you love to pay your bills, and you've got big bills and a big family to feed, I just think that you just put yourself at risk of sabotaging what you love and doing it not in the way that you would most deeply want to. You end up doing it to get something in return rather than doing it in the way that you feel most deeply called to. And I think one of the main reasons for that is we are all such unique embodiments of the same stuff, love, freedom, consciousness, whatever you want to call it, that what we do to try and, if we're not careful, it can be very easy to slip into the sabotage, and it is a sabotage, of doing what everyone else is doing because they're getting results. But actually, you're just putting on a coat, not being who you really are. And it's who you really are that people love, that people want to be around. I mean, you feel it. You know, if you're with a group of people, you gravitate toward the person who's most relaxed and alive in their body. You know, their spine is strong and supple and their front surface is soft, and you can feel them. You're like, I don't know who you are, but I can feel who you really are. You don't have to agree with them, but there's this kind of trustability. You trust them.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And you can feel it. I want to ask you, you do amazing work with couples. And when we were, you know, talking earlier about this fast-paced life, this, you know, there's so many interruptions and distractions and everything else. Now, I'm generalizing, but I would assume that most people want a connected, beautiful relationship with their partner. I want to ask you, because I know that it was something that you did in one of your events, was you spoke about intimacy and coming together and enjoying an amazing sex life even when you're tired at the end of the day, without it being that trade-off that we were talking a little bit earlier. So what can you share with us about that?
Okay, so it is really true. I mean, let's face it, most of us by the end of the day are pretty shattered. You know, we're ready. If you've got kids or work, I mean, I have a 17-year-old now, so I don't have toddlers running around. But, you know, I have a business and I have a life, and, I'm still a mum, and I'm required for homework, reading and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I think what's most important is to get really clear. What do you most want to give, receive? Like if you were totally free and anything was possible, what are you most aching to give and receive in your intimacy? And then I have to say, giving it and receiving it when you feel most resistant is actually when the most profound magic tends to happen. I know for me, when I'm most resistant, if I feel shut down, maybe Mo said something that hurt my feeling and I'm still carrying that as residue rather than being responsible to either express how I feel in the moment as an invitation to him to know my heart, which is hurt in that moment, or if I haven't expressed it, then it's my responsibility just to process that residue and bring myself into the next moment. I find that when I'm most resistant, if I can wiggle into the yearning that I have for that intimacy, kind of soften through the resistance into the yearning, and just do one thing. Like literally for me it's one thing. So it might just be, you're lying in bed, I'm going to turn toward him. That's it. Oh, maybe it's two things. Maybe I'm going to turn toward him or her and breathe. Maybe I'm not going to close my eyes. Maybe I'm not just going to hug in this moment. Maybe I'm going to tilt my chin and give a delicious tender kiss rather than just a hug. Because what I'm really wanting is intimacy. And for me, I don't know about you, but for me, I can tell when I'm off because I'll just lie there in resentment, like, fuck man, why aren't you coming in and loving me? Like as soon as I feel that, I know that I'm in my thing. And it's like, okay, well, clearly that's not something that's going to be all that, motivating because I'm bunched around my enclosure. But if I could for a moment just kind of what's really going on here? And what's going on is I'm aching for deeper intimacy in this moment. Okay, then what could I do about that? I could soften my belly, I could soften my breasts, I could let you feel my yearning through my eyes or through my lips, or just breathing. I mean, I teach women how to communicate with their partner through their breath. I call it breath talking. I mean, there's a lot you can say just with your breath through or your eyes. You can articulate through your whole body really big, or through just a very subtle part of your body, just as big or sometimes bigger. So the end of the day tends to magnify resistance because we're tired. And if we don't do our own practice of releasing tension at the end of the day, then we go to bed all curled up in a ball of tired tension. So just doing 5 minutes of movement, 5 minutes of breath work, put on your favorite music, have a hot shower or a bath, like whatever softens your body and your heart into the moment again, I think is really, really valuable. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then it's also, sometimes it's spontaneous moments in the middle of the day when you're not really tired, when you have really energy, but your mind would say, it's too busy, we should be doing blah, blah, blah. But actually, just really diving into a moment of deep, delicious intimacy in the middle of the day when there's no kids around, or putting it in the diary. We put things in the diary so that that space can't be claimed by clients or anything else. So
absolutely, I love that word, yearning. It is a word that just it makes me feel so good, because it just, for me, it captures that, that desire, and that, and it's a calling, right?
it is. It's from a very deep belly, heart place. And there's a profound difference between yearning and complaint, between even yearning and desire. The yearning is this calling that kind of, it's what we really, really, the yearning unfulfilled creates an aching, right? The yearning on fire creates a desire. I mean, yearning is really, for me, the very essence of that call. And to feel your yearning requires a softening. It really does. It requires an embodied heart breath softening. You can't really feel a yearning except for in the moments where you're full. So the yearning is not fill me, fill me, fill me. The yearning is, I'm so full. I must have you dive into this. It's not fill me because I'm empty. It really is from this fullness that you are.
Absolutely. It feels good. Yeah. I had a question in there that popped up, but it's escaped me now. Just, it's really amazing that even then, when we're talking about, yearning, and that if you're laying in bed and you're feeling resentment because you really want something, but again, kind of goes back to, actually, no, what was the thought beyond that? Is that you're craving for intimacy from him, but what you're showing is resentment. So again, we missed that first thought, right?
Well, the thing is, you have to, because you are love. I mean, we put words on these things, but it gets really, woo-woo. I'm not trying to be woo. I'm like If we were in our last moment, if a bomb was about to hit and we were looking at each other and this was all we had, right?
Yeah.
The texture of breath we took would be different. It just would be. It's what I call a Pompeii moment. So you know that moment where the lava's just about to come and encapsulate. It's like, well, what posture do you want to be in? A posture of, you know, or a posture of being the love you really are. And the thing is that who you really are is not closure, is not armored. We learn how to armor as we grow up because it's may or may not be safe to be this bliss ball of love we are, and that armory, you know, there's a difference between having a strong spine and being very armored. You know, I think a lot of the women I work with say to me, well, what do I do now? Like, oh my God, like I'm juicy, I'm alive, I'm fullness itself. It doesn't feel very safe to walk around the world like that. And it's like, well, no, it's probably not. You know, because you only need to walk up the street and you can feel yourself being slimed. So how do you walk up the street with your spine strong and supple and still soft and fluid on the inside, saying yes when you mean yes, no when you mean no, but not being armored against what you're yearning for? So that discernment, that spine says, yeah, you're worthy of being someone I could trust with my soft, juicy insides in this moment. And it is a moment by moment thing, right?
Absolutely, exactly. Why is it that I know that within the hedonistic way, you know, there is an element of sensuality and sex. And you know what? Out of the four elements and the four pillars to the hedonistic way, it is the one that most people are most afraid of. You know,
Well,
towards allowing ourselves pleasure. Why is it?
oh dear. So, all right, well, let's just look at history. So for many thousands of years, like in the pagan times, it was not something to be afraid of. In the times where the goddess was worshipped, it wasn't something to be afraid of. But as, you know, religion has done a really good job on sex, basically. And that's been in our collective consciousness and passed down in our cellular DNA for many generations now. So there's that, and then there's also the genuine desire of our parents to protect us in the best way they know how. So they tell us what they know about sex, or they say nothing to try and protect us. But either way, they insinuate by what they say and how they say it. I was really lucky. My mum is an incredible woman, and did you have that book, Where Do Babies Come From? And that might be an Australian thing. I don't know. Right. So that book was prominent on our bookshelf, and my mum talked with us really openly and beautifully, age appropriate. And so I never had any shame myself around sex, but I definitely had the good girl thing going on about, you know, I was raised Catholic, you know. I remember sitting, I'll tell you a very quick story. So we had a priest at our church called Father Bob, and he rode around on a Harley and wore black leather, and he would go to everyone's houses and we'd bake the bread, and, you know, he'd bless it, and it was real community. And I look back and I'm like, man, like, he was such a dude, and he must have been so out there. And then he got replaced by this really traditional, and we had a rock band, and, you know, the kids, a youth rock band. And then he left and this really traditional priest came along. And I still remember as a child sitting in that church, because I have always had a really devoted heart. And, you know, I love going to church and singing. And then all I kept hearing was, "You're a sinner for being alive." Like, it was, and his tone was so, you know, in my little girl body, like, "You're bad, you're bad," like so condemning. And it was very confusing, was really confusing. And so, yeah, I mean, I think the church and our parents and society, part of it is to control us, part of it is to protect us. But for all these reasons, it's all messed up. So sex and money are the two things that are most taboo, that we have the most stuff about. And it really all has to do with power, our relationship to our own power and freedom. Can I be free? You know, the couples we work with, sometimes they're on the edge of breaking up, and sometimes they're just on this edge of, we're great, we've got a good relationship, but there are these edges that we want to dive into together, but we just don't feel free in our own bodies. And sometimes it's trauma, and sometimes they're just not practiced at it. You know, what if you could be free in this kind of way of being together sexually? And so I think I've gone completely off track, and I don't know if I've even answered your question.
No, not at all. Not at all.
What was your original question around that? Around sex. Why is sex such a thing?
Yeah. Essentially, like, well, you know, a lot of us are so closed
Shame.
off. Yeah.
Shame, vulnerability, fear of judgment. One of the things that I get women to do when I work with women, I get them to walk around the street and notice all the judgments they have around other women. Well, she looks a bit prudish. She looks a bit slutty. You know, she looks very overbearing. She looks very prim and proper. Like, all these judgments around everyone else. And then you go home and you go, okay, what would that way of being look like in my body? And actually practice that from the inside out until you can look at that woman and go, I love that. I love that in you. Because if you can love it in her, you can look at yourself and love it in you. And then you're free. You're not controlled by it. Because again, such as shadow work, anything that you put down, anything you say is bad, that you deny within yourself, it has to come up dysfunctionally. It just does.
Absolutely. That is so true.
So the exploration of it and the embodiment of it doesn't mean you have to walk around like that all the time. Doesn't mean you have to walk around being the thing that you were previously judging. But it's just the freedom of it, that you could look at it and see it as love moving through that woman in that flavour, in that way, in this moment. And wow, what a beautiful thing.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I love that, because it's so right. Like, to have the, you know, the confidence to be able to explore that within yourself, within a relationship, you know, no matter what it is, you actually really first have to accept yourself and love yourself. Because that then gives you the confidence to be able to show your partner a side of you that you haven't seen, so they definitely haven't seen it, you know. So, which is, you know, I wonder, I had a thought before, you know, we're talking about how, you know, like our parents, and, you know, we can talk about sex and where do you come from and everything else. You know, if you're going through those teenage years and, you know, it's so, you know, I was just had this flood of, when you were talking then, the flood of memories of, you know, like, you don't want to feel like a slut. You don't want to be that girl, you know, but then, you know, when I first had my first orgasm, I was like, oh, what was that? Like,
You didn't even know what was happening? Wow. Yes.
Okay. I didn't know.
Yeah.
But I'd been having sex for a while before having that, and when you are moist and you're like, oh, what's going on there?
Yeah.
I think so many of us, because we don't have those conversations,
Yes.
like, how do we navigate through that? It's actually amazing that we do somehow.
Absolutely. I mean, it's amazing that, I think essentially really what gets passed most freely is, I think the species has only been regenerated because of the animalistic, knowledge of, of what's, of making a baby. But making love is entirely different, right? And knowing about your body and what turns your own body on and what doesn't. I mean, I have a teenage boy. I don't have a girl, so, I have a teenage boy, and so our conversations are, we're really, really open with him. We talk. I would much rather him learn about sex and intimacy and relationship from us than from anything he's going to learn from his friends or online.
That's right.
And I think the best gift we can give to our children is actually resolving our own stuff and then being able to have open conversations and really listening, just really listening. I mean, you have kids. I do this thing with my son. Mind you, he's got his own car and license now, so we're less in the car together. But I would drive along and something would come on the radio and I'd just say, wow, did you hear that statistic, something about sex or whatever? And I'd say, wow, I didn't know that. And then I would say, what about your friends? How do they feel about blah, blah, blah? So I wouldn't make it about him. I would make it about his friends. And honestly, when I could hear his little head going, did she really just ask me that? Does she really want me to answer that? Right? So I can hear those cogs turning and I just stay very quiet and wait and see. And then he'll go, well, and he'll answer a little bit, and then I'll say, like, you just don't inject your opinion, you just listen, and then you know where they're really at, because what we navigated is entirely different to what our kids today are navigating around sex and intimacy. They are bombarded with I would say that most teenagers have a much higher degree of sexual trauma than we did, as in more children are sexually traumatized. They may not have been abused, but I think trauma is anything you're exposed to that your nervous system is just not ready for. And I don't think these little nervous systems are ready for what is easily encounterable online. And then once you're curious, there's a plethora of it. You can access porn, you can access whatever you want anytime. So I think the best thing we can do is keep the lines of communication open, do a lot of listening. There's a brilliant book, I don't know if you know it, called How to Talk So Kids Listen and Listen So Kids Talk. And there's one for teens as well. I love that. And resolving our own stuff to the best we can, and so that we are having conversations that are about them, not about us.
Yes, exactly. And that's a tricky one, isn't it? That's just in itself, I think, is it's so easy then to be able to say, to share stories and to be able to say something, but then I know my children are like, well, like, what's that got to do with me? So it's a total space. Yeah, I love that. Yeah. That's really beautiful. This has been, we have taken.
Have we? Oh my goodness! They're probably wanting to start innovating across the road again.
I don't even know. But thank you for your openness, because when we're chatting, I have no idea where these conversations are going to go, and They just happen. So thank you so much for your openness, because we shifted gears so many times in our chat here, but all of it was just, it was amazing. And I think you are absolutely an incredible soul, and I feel so lucky to be able to share this life with you and at this time, because you are incredible.
Well,
you are
I
just
have to
beautiful.
say, you know, you see what you are, and I really receive what you've said, and you know, it's really beautiful. I thank you, and at the same time, you see what you are. It takes two to tango, and this conversation is because of you, and I hope that it's been useful to someone on the planet, even if it was just fun for us.
Yeah. I'm sure it will be, because, you know, what we spoke about here inside this episode now is that people in general conversations don't necessarily ask these questions.
Yeah.
They don't, you know, even to their friends or to whoever.
Yeah.
So, you know, to be able to then, you know, to start up that conversation, so then now, you know, people can start to, they do feel heard, and I'm not crazy for having these thoughts, or,
That's right.
you know, and to open up that gateway is absolutely, you know, it's life-changing for everybody. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
I will put Lisa's details in the post, and I encourage all of you to check out her radio station, her radio show, to check out her work, because her work is absolutely amazing. And if you missed it earlier, you work with the most amazing people, like amazing. I watch your life, and it's like, oh, so cool. So,
yeah, I feel really lucky,
so,
and yeah, and I think what you've done is create a platform, which is something that I really love, which is beyond cafe chat. You know, it's very easy to have a cafe kind of chat, but the question is, what's really going on here? What am I? If I were free, what would I really love to say? What would I really love to ask? And I think that that's where the real juice happens. So thank you for creating that space, and yeah, deep honoring for who you are and all the ways that you gift the world, because I see this show and I see your jam, which I do hope to get to one day. And
yes,
you just,
we'll
yeah.
Thanks,
Beautiful.
beautiful.
Thank
you so
you.
much.
Pleasure.
So good to connect with you today, as
You too.
always, and I really thank you so much. I will talk to you soon, and I will see everybody else next week. Thanks, guys.
Thanks,
Bye.
guys.
Bye.